For over 4,000 years, the land of Israel and Palestine has been the stage for a cosmic struggle, one rooted in divine promises and ancient prophecies. But what if I told you that beneath the surface of this territorial dispute lies a deeper, more profound mystery? A mystery that not only divides nations, but also stirs the soul. Why does this conflict persist, generation after generation? Could it be that the true origins of this feud are hidden from us, woven into the very fabric of the Bible itself? And what if the answers we seek lie in the ancient words spoken to Abraham, echoing through time, shaping the destiny of two peoples in ways we've never truly understood? In this video, we're going to uncover the untold story behind the Israel and Palestine conflict, tracing its roots back to the promises of Abraham, the struggle for the Holy Land, and how these ancient prophecies continue to influence the course of nations today. You'll discover how these divine words etched in Scripture have not only shaped the past, but also the future of this sacred land. We'll also dive deep into why Jerusalem, the jewel of these ancient prophecies, remains the most contested city on earth, and how this once unified promise became the source of unending strife. But as we dig deeper into this spiritual and political battleground, one question looms large. Can any peace ever truly be achieved in a land so deeply entwined with divine history and earthly politics? The answers you'll find may surprise you. Stay with us as we journey through the biblical roots of this ancient conflict, uncovering layers of history, prophecy, and spiritual warfare that you may have never known before. And as we explore these truths together, feel free to share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and like, so we can continue bringing these profound stories to light. Let's begin our journey into the heart of this timeless story. Unveiling the ancient roots of the Israel-Palestine conflict. For thousands of years, the conflict between Israel and Palestine has been much more than a struggle over land. It is a battle that transcends geography, woven into the very promises of God Himself. To understand why the conflict persists today, we must look back to its biblical origins, to the ancient story of Abraham and the land promised to him. But what does this promise really mean, and how did it fracture into the divisions we see today? Abraham, the patriarch of both the Jewish and Arab peoples, was given a covenant by God. In Genesis 12, 1-3, God speaks to Abraham saying, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." This promise was not simply about territory. It was about a divine inheritance, a gift from God Himself to Abraham's descendants. Yet this promise was not without its complications. For Abraham and his wife Sarah, there was a deep yearning for a child, a son through whom this covenant would be fulfilled. However, when Sarah in her desperation suggested that Abraham have a child with her servant Hagar, the child born was Ishmael, the forefather of the Arab people. Later, when Abraham was 100 years old and Sarah 90, God fulfilled His promise in a way that defied all human logic. Sarah bore Isaac, and God declared that His covenant would continue through Isaac and his descendants. This moment became the beginning of a family drama that would echo through millennia, creating the divide we witness today between the descendants of Isaac, the Israelites, and the descendants of Ishmael, the Arab peoples, including the Palestinians. Imagine, for a moment, the tension in Abraham's heart. Two sons, one by his beloved wife Sarah and one by Hagar, both carrying the weight of a promise from God. What was meant to be a blessing became a curse, as the paths of these two brothers and their descendants were destined to diverge. One line would become the foundation of Israel, the other, the ancestors of the Palestinian people. This divide, born of love, faith, and human struggle, continues to shape the region today. The Jewish people trace their heritage directly back to Isaac through Jacob, whose 12 sons became the 12 tribes of Israel. God promises them the land of Canaan, a promise repeated throughout the Bible, notably in Genesis 15:18-21, where God tells Abraham, "To your descendants I give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates." For the Jewish people, this land is not just soil, it is the sacred, everlasting inheritance given by God, a promise that resonates through every Jewish prayer, through the very heartbeat of the nation. But for the Palestinians, many of whom trace their roots back to Ishmael and the ancient Canaanites, this land is just as sacred. Their ancestors have lived there for centuries, cultivating its soil, building its cities, and calling it home. For them, the claim to the land is not based on promises from an ancient text, but on a history of deep personal connection to the land itself. To see their homes threatened, their heritage questioned, and their future uncertain creates a deep sense of loss and injustice. It is a feeling that is not easily understood unless you have lived it. To have your ancestral land claimed by another, with the weight of their scriptures declaring it their eternal inheritance. This brings us to the heart of the Israel-Palestine conflict today. It is not just a political dispute over borders or territories. It is a profound spiritual battle. For the Jewish people, the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948 was the fulfillment of the ancient promise, the dry bones coming to life, as prophesied in Ezekiel 37, when God says, "I will make breath enter you, and you will come to life." The creation of Israel, following the horrific suffering of the Holocaust, seemed to many as a miraculous return to the land promised by God. For the Palestinians, however, the same event marked the beginning of their Nakba, the catastrophe, when they were displaced from their homes, forced into refugee camps, and stripped of their land. To them, this was not a return to a promised land. It was the loss of a home and identity they had lived in for generations. As we look at this story, it is clear that both sides have valid claims to the land. The question we face is not who has the right to the land, but how can we heal the wounds of the past and build a future where both peoples can live in peace. The pain of both the Jewish and Palestinian people is intertwined, bound together by a shared history and a divine promise that, instead of uniting them, has caused generations of division and heartache. How do we reconcile these two narratives, each deeply rooted in faith, identity, and history? The role of Jerusalem, a city of divine promise and conflict. If there is one place that symbolizes the heart of this conflict, it is Jerusalem, the city revered by Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike. Jerusalem is not just a city. It is a divine battleground, the site of prophecies, the cradle of faith, and the center of spiritual longing. For the Jewish people, Jerusalem is the eternal capital, the city of David, where God's presence once dwelt in the temple. For Palestinians and Muslims, Jerusalem holds the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the third holiest site in Islam, a city rich with history, culture, and identity. In 2 Chronicles chapter 6:6, God declares, "But I have chosen Jerusalem that my name might be there, and I have chosen David to be over my people, Israel." This promise to King David, that Jerusalem would be the seat of God's glory, is foundational to Jewish belief. To Jews, Jerusalem is not just a city, but a divine gift, a promise fulfilled when King David established it as the capital of Israel, and when King Solomon built the temple, the very center of Jewish worship. But for the Palestinians, Jerusalem represents the heart of their own story and struggle. The city, with its ancient walls, bustling markets, and sacred sites, has been a symbol of Palestinian identity for centuries. The loss of East Jerusalem, the heart of the city, to Israeli control in 1967 was seen as a great injustice, deepening the wound of the Nakba. Jerusalem is not merely a political or territorial issue, it is a symbol of spiritual loss and longing, especially for Palestinians who see it as the city that should rightfully be their capital. In Zechariah 12:3, God speaks of Jerusalem, saying, "And it shall come to pass in that day that I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces." This prophecy has echoed through the ages, as every nation and every power that has tried to control Jerusalem has found themselves entangled in conflict. Jerusalem is not just a city of bricks and mortar. It is a symbol of divine promise and human struggle, a place where the hopes and dreams of both Jews and Palestinians converge. Can peace ever be achieved in Jerusalem? The answer, it seems, lies not just in political negotiations, but in understanding the sacred significance of this city to both peoples. For peace to come, both Jews and Palestinians must recognize Jerusalem for what it is, a divine promise that was never meant to divide, but to unite. But how can this happen? Can a city that holds such deep spiritual and emotional significance ever truly be shared by both peoples? The challenge lies not just in political negotiations or diplomatic efforts. It lies in reconciling two deeply held beliefs about a city that stands at the center of both divine promise and human conflict. And so, as we continue to explore the roots of this ancient conflict, we must ask ourselves, what role does faith play in our understanding of the Israel-Palestine conflict? Is it possible to move beyond the bitterness of the past, to heal the wounds that have been passed down through generations, and to find a path forward that honors both the divine promises and the human longing for peace? The journey toward peace is long and difficult, but as we reflect on the ancient promises made to Abraham and the deep ties both peoples have to the land, we must hold on to hope. Hope that one day, Jerusalem, the city of divine promise, can be a symbol not of division, but of unity. From 1948 to the Nakba, the divide deepens. The year 1948 stands as a pivotal moment, a dividing line not only on maps, but in the hearts of millions. For the Jewish people, 1948 marked the fulfillment of an ancient promise, the establishment of Israel, a homeland reborn after centuries of exile, rooted deeply in prophecy. For the Palestinians, however, it was a catastrophe, the Nakba, a day when they were uprooted from their homes, their communities scattered, and their lives changed forever. This tragedy did not merely reshape the geography of the Middle East, it fractured the very identity of a people. Israel's birth in 1948 was seen by Jews around the world as the fulfillment of God's promise, a moment in which they saw the dry bones of Ezekiel's vision come to life. In Ezekiel 37:11-12, the Lord speaks to the prophet saying, "Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. They say, 'Our bones are dried up and our hope is gone. We are cut off.' Therefore prophesy and say to them, 'This is what the sovereign Lord says. O my people, I am going to open your graves and bring you up from them. I will bring you back to the land of Israel.'" For the Jewish people, the return to Israel after nearly 2 millennia was not just historical. It was the divine hand of God at work, fulfilling a promise made long ago. But while Jewish communities across the world danced with joy, marking the rebirth of their nation, the Palestinian experience was one of profound loss. For them, 1948 was the Nakba, the catastrophe, a day when their land, homes, and history were taken from them. In the chaos of war, over 700,000 Palestinians were displaced, fleeing from their homes in fear or being driven out by advancing Israeli forces. Their lives, once rooted in ancient soil, were torn apart, and the pain of displacement became a defining trauma for generations to come. What does it mean to lose your homeland? For the Palestinians, this question reverberates through every aspect of their lives. Their homes were more than physical structures. They were symbols of family, heritage, and identity. Imagine, if you will, holding the key to a house you can no longer enter, knowing that your ancestors once lived in that space worked that land, and watched their children grow. This is the burden carried by millions of Palestinian refugees. The right of return remains one of the most emotional and enduring demands of the Palestinian people, a cry for justice, recognition, and the restoration of a lost heritage. As we reflect on 1948, the question becomes, how can two peoples who both claim a divine promise to the same land find peace? The establishment of Israel was a dream realized for one people, but for the Palestinians, it was a nightmare that continues to haunt them to this day. This clash of narratives, the dream of a Jewish homeland and the tragedy of Palestinian displacement, is at the very heart of the Israel-Palestine conflict. The story of 1948 is not just about territory, it is about identity, legacy, and the deep emotional ties to the land that both peoples share. To heal the wounds of 1948, both sides must reckon with the pain and loss of the other, a journey that begins not with politics, but with understanding. The role of empires and foreign powers, a complicated history. The conflict between Israel and Palestine has been shaped not only by the divine promises recorded in Scripture, but also by the intervention of foreign powers, whose interests have often conflicted with the desires of the people who call the land home. The history of this region is littered with the footprints of empires, each leaving its mark on the land and its people. From the Ottoman Empire to British colonial rule, foreign powers have not only shaped the political landscape, but also influenced the very identity of the people living there. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the rise of Zionism, the movement for a Jewish homeland in Palestine, gained traction, influenced by centuries of persecution and the promise of a return to their ancestral land. Jewish leaders like Theodor Herzl began advocating for the establishment of a Jewish state in Palestine, but the land they sought to reclaim was already inhabited by a large Arab population, many of whom had lived there for generations. This tension between the desires of the Jewish people for a homeland and the rights of the indigenous Palestinian Arabs was set to become the core of the conflict. At the same time, the British Empire, having gained control over Palestine after World War I, promised support for both the Jews and Arabs, though in ways that would ultimately sow discord. The Balfour Declaration of 1917, issued by the British government, supported the establishment of a Jewish national home in Palestine. This declaration, however, was seen by many Arabs as a betrayal, as it ignored the aspirations of the Palestinian people for self-determination. In the years that followed, tensions between Jewish immigrants and the Arab population grew, culminating in violent clashes. During the 1930s and 1940s, as the Jewish population in Palestine grew, the Palestinian Arabs feared displacement and loss of their land, while Jews fleeing persecution in Europe saw Palestine as their only refuge. The conflict intensified as both sides sought to claim the land, not just as a political entity, but as a sacred inheritance that had been promised to them by God. But what role did the British and other foreign powers play in shaping this conflict? The British, struggling to maintain control of their empire, found themselves caught between the conflicting promises made to both Jews and Arabs. Their policies were inconsistent, leading to growing resentment and mistrust on both sides. The United States and the Soviet Union, each with their own geopolitical interests, also played significant roles in shaping the outcome of the conflict, offering support to Israel and influencing the international response to the situation. The legacy of foreign intervention in the Israel-Palestine conflict cannot be understated. While these powers may have sought to protect their own interests, the consequences of their actions have reverberated through history. From the creation of Israel in 1948 to the ongoing struggles in Gaza and the West Bank, the interventions of empires and foreign powers have created a complex web of political and emotional struggles that continue to this day. So, as we reflect on the role of foreign powers in this conflict, we must ask, how much responsibility do these external forces bear for the ongoing tensions? Can true peace be achieved in a land where the actions of foreign powers have continually shifted the balance of power, deepening the divide between the people who call it home? Perhaps the lesson we can learn is that peace cannot come solely from external interventions, but must begin with the people themselves, recognizing the shared history, pain, and hope that bind them together. Jerusalem, the city of divine promise and human struggle. Jerusalem is not just a city, it is the heartbeat of two peoples, a place where the promises of God meet the struggles of humanity. In its narrow streets, ancient walls, and holy sites, Jerusalem carries the weight of millennia of history that intertwines spiritual yearning with political tension. For both Jews and Palestinians, this city is more than just a territorial prize. It is a symbol of divine promise, spiritual identity, and unyielding hope. For the Jewish people, Jerusalem has always been the city of the heart, the place where God chose to dwell among his people, where King David made it his capital, and where Solomon built the magnificent temple. In 2 Chronicles chapter 6:6, God declares, "But I have chosen Jerusalem, that my name might be there, and I have chosen David to be over my people Israel." This declaration resonates deeply with the Jewish faith, for Jerusalem is not just a physical city, but the embodiment of God's covenant with Israel. The Western Wall, the last remnant of the Second Temple, is a sacred place where millions of Jewish people gather to pray, reflecting on their history, their faith, and the hope of a future redemption. But for the Palestinians, Jerusalem holds a different, equally sacred significance. It is not just a city, but the heart of their identity. The Al-Aqsa Mosque, located in the old city of Jerusalem, is the third holiest site in Islam, the place where the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven during his night journey. To Muslims, Jerusalem is not a foreign city. It is a symbol of spiritual connection, a place that has been part of their heritage for centuries. For Palestinians, the loss of East Jerusalem, with its vibrant Palestinian population, is not just a loss of land. It is the loss of a deeply rooted connection to their ancestors, their culture, and their faith. The story of Jerusalem is one of deep spiritual and emotional attachment, and it is this attachment that makes the city so contested. Jerusalem is a city of divine promise and human struggle, and its significance is not confined to politics. It touches the soul. The Jewish people see it as the fulfillment of God's promises, while Palestinians see it as an essential part of their history, culture, and faith. Yet, despite these profound connections, the two sides find themselves at odds, unable to reconcile their claims to this holy city. Jerusalem, for both Jews and Palestinians, is not just a place on a map. It is a sacred space, a symbol of everything that is at stake in their struggle for identity, security, and sovereignty. The city is woven into the very fabric of their belief systems, so much so that it is often seen as the ultimate prize, the place that holds the key to peace, yet also the source of profound division. This is why Jerusalem remains at the center of the conflict, because it is not just about land, it is about faith, identity, and the deep spiritual yearning of two peoples to lay claim to a piece of earth that is forever linked to their sacred texts. In Zechariah 12:3, God speaks of Jerusalem saying, "And it shall come to pass in that day that I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces." This prophecy has been realized throughout history, as Jerusalem has become a burden, a stone that no empire or power has been able to move without facing consequences. The Crusaders, the Ottomans, the British, and now the modern powers, they have all struggled with the weight of Jerusalem, and none have been able to resolve the conflict surrounding it. Can peace ever be achieved in Jerusalem? Can two peoples with such deeply entrenched spiritual and emotional ties to the city ever find a way to share it? The challenge is not just about political compromise. It is about recognizing the sacred nature of the city for both Jews and Palestinians. To heal the wounds of the past, both sides must understand that the city is not just a political prize. It is a divine gift, a place where God's presence has been felt for millennia. For Jews, the Western Wall represents the last remnants of the sacred temple, the site where their ancestors worshipped. For Muslims, the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque stand as symbols of the divine, places where God's presence is still felt in the prayers that echo through the streets. Yet, the tension between these two claims to Jerusalem remains unresolved. Every peace negotiation, every ceasefire, and every attempt at reconciliation finds its limits in the spiritual significance of the city. How can two peoples, each claiming the same sacred ground, ever find peace? The answer lies in understanding that peace in Jerusalem will not come from one side dominating the other, but from a shared recognition of its divine importance. It will require a deep, painful, and often uncomfortable acknowledgement of the sacred nature of this land for both Jews and Palestinians. Perhaps the path to peace in Jerusalem begins with humility. Instead of seeking to dominate, both sides must learn to share the city, to respect its sacredness, and to find a way to coexist in a space that has been blessed and burdened by God for thousands of years. The challenge is not just political, it is deeply spiritual. Jerusalem is a city that tests the very souls of those who seek to possess it, and until both Jews and Palestinians recognize the sacred nature of the city and approach it with respect and reverence, peace will remain elusive. In the end, Jerusalem is not just a city of conflict, it is a city of hope. Despite the darkness, despite the bloodshed, Jerusalem remains a place of longing, a place where the hearts of millions continue to beat with the hope of reconciliation, understanding, and peace. Could it be that the divine promise of Jerusalem, that it will one day be a city of peace and worship for all nations, is still to come? Only time will tell. But until then, we must remember that the road to peace in Jerusalem begins with us, the people of faith, the people of hope, and the people who believe that God's promises can heal the divisions of the past. Jerusalem is the burden that both divides and unites. It stands as a witness to the promises of God, the hopes of the faithful, and the struggles of the human heart. As we move forward in this journey, we must remember that the solution to the conflict does not lie in the hands of kings, politicians, or armies, but in the hearts of those who walk in the footsteps of prophets, seeking not just victory but peace, a peace that honors the divine promises and the sacredness of Jerusalem for all. As we stand at the crossroads of history, looking back at the ancient promises and struggles that have shaped the Israel-Palestine conflict, it becomes clear that we are not simply witnessing a political dispute. This is a spiritual battle that has endured for over 4,000 years, rooted in divine promises and human emotions that transcend borders and time. From the biblical covenant given to Abraham, to the creation of Israel in 1948, to the ongoing struggles over Jerusalem, this conflict is not just about land or power. It is about identity, faith, and the deep yearning of two peoples who, despite their differences, share an ancient bond with the same sacred land. We have explored how the promises of God to Abraham have shaped the destinies of Israel and Palestine. These promises, both blessings and burdens, have been passed down through generations, echoing in the hearts of those who call this land home. For the Jewish people, the return to the Promised Land is a fulfillment of divine prophecy, a long-awaited homecoming after centuries of exile. For the Palestinians, however, this same land represents loss, displacement, and the unfulfilled dream of self-determination. Both sides, bound by faith and history, have been torn apart by the same promise, each believing that the land belongs to them. Yet, within this deep division, there is also a profound opportunity for healing. The key to peace lies not in winning over the other, but in recognizing the shared sacredness of this land. It is in understanding that the pain of one is felt by the other. Jerusalem, the heart of this conflict, is not just a city. It is a living symbol of the divine promises and human struggles that have shaped the course of history. It is a city that has been fought over, prayed for, and wept over for thousands of years, yet still stands as a beacon of hope for those who seek peace. Jerusalem is not the problem, it is the solution. A solution that begins not in the halls of diplomacy or on the battlefields, but in the hearts of those who believe in the possibility of reconciliation. As we reflect on this journey through history and prophecy, we must ask ourselves, what is our role in this story? How do we, as individuals, contribute to the peace that has eluded these peoples for so long? The answer lies in understanding that peace is not just a political agreement, it is a spiritual transformation. It begins with us, each of us choosing to see the other not as an enemy, but as a fellow child of God. It is about recognizing the divine promises that have been entrusted to both peoples and finding a way to honor those promises without claiming them exclusively for ourselves. The journey toward peace is long and fraught with obstacles, but it is also filled with the light of hope. Hope that one day Jerusalem will be a city of peace, a place where people of all faiths can come together to worship and live in harmony. Hope that the descendants of Isaac and Ishmael can finally come to terms with the past and build a future where the ancient promises of God are fulfilled in a way that brings healing, not harm. Hope that through understanding and compassion, we can bridge the gap between these two peoples and create a world where the divine promise of the land can be a blessing for all. If this video has touched your soul, if it has helped you find light in the midst of darkness, I invite you to share a little of that energy with me. Your support, whether through a like, a subscribe, or a thoughtful comment, means the world to me. Every gesture, no matter how small, is a priceless gift that allows me to continue sharing these stories, these messages of hope, and the wisdom of the Bible with you. Together, we can continue to explore the deep truths that have been passed down through generations and find the light that shines through the darkness. As we journey together through these sacred stories, I encourage you to reflect on your own connection to the promises of the Bible. What does this land mean to you? How can we all work toward a future where these ancient promises bring healing and not division? The road to peace is long, but each step we take brings us closer to understanding, closer to healing, and closer to the light that God has promised us all. Thank you, from the depths of my heart, for being part of this journey with me. May we all continue to walk in faith, hope, and love, knowing that the promise of peace is not just something to wish for, it is something we can create together with God's guidance.